Nobody in that studio was ready for what happened next. Two former presidents, one stage, and in a single quiet moment, Barack Obama reached across the table, placed a document between them, and watched Donald Trump's entire armor crack in front of a live audience. What followed wasn't a debate, it was a demolition. The studio lights inside the Manhattan Broadcast Center burned bright enough to bleach the shadows off the floor. The stage gleamed like polished glass under those heavy overhead rigs. Two leather chairs, one low table between them, and a set of microphones that felt almost too small for the weight of what was about to happen. The audience filed in slowly, maybe 300 people, and every single one of them walked in with the same tight electric energy, the kind you feel before lightning strikes. There were no casual conversations in the seats tonight. People sat straight. They glanced at the stage and looked away quickly, like the tension was already too sharp to stare at directly. Even the camera operators moved slower than usual, double-checking their angles, aware that something rare was coming. The moderator stepped to the front, kept it clean and quick. "Tonight," he said, "two of the most consequential men in modern American history sit down without scripts, without filters, and without safe ground. Please welcome President Donald Trump and President Barack Obama." The applause that followed was enormous, but it was nervous applause, the kind that trembles just a little at the edges. Trump came through the curtain first. He walked like the room already belonged to him. Shoulders back, chest wide, chin angled just high enough to signal that he had already decided how this evening was going to go. He gave the crowd a slow half-wave and that familiar smirk, part confidence, part dare, then dropped into his chair with the ease of a man sitting down at his own dinner table. He didn't look at Obama's empty chair. He didn't need to. Obama came seconds later, and the contrast was immediate. Where Trump filled space, Obama moved through it. His walk was measured, unhurried, like a man who had all the time in the world and wasn't interested in rushing. He offered a quiet nod to the audience. Not a performance, just an acknowledgement, then sat down with a stillness that was somehow louder than anything Trump had done. He placed two folded cards on the table in front of him. No one noticed them yet. The moderator barely finished his first question before Trump leaned forward, cutting into the air with his voice like a blade. "Leadership is one thing," Trump said, finger-chopping the table for emphasis. "Results, that's it, full stop." While some people were busy giving the most beautiful speeches nobody ever remembered, I was out there building the strongest economy this country has ever seen in history. Record low unemployment, stock market through the roof. We brought jobs back. We held China accountable. We had energy independence, border security, the Abraham Accords. These are things you can see, things you can measure, not hope, not change, actual wins. He leaned back and let that land. You either deliver or you don't, and I delivered. Everybody knows it. Scattered applause broke across the studio. A few heads nodded hard. Others stayed still, watching Obama's face. Obama didn't move. He sat completely still for roughly 10 seconds, just long enough to be deliberate. His eyes stayed on Trump, calm and unreadable. Then he leaned forward exactly 2 inches and spoke. "Results built on sand," Obama said quietly, "don't survive the first real storm. You can stack up every number, every chart, every economic figure you want, but if those wins only reach the top while everyone else is falling further behind, you haven't led the country. You've led yourself." He tilted his head slightly. "So tell me honestly, Donald, when your version of winning leaves millions of working families right where they started, what exactly is the win for?" The audience went flat quiet. Trump laughed, that big, dismissive laugh, but his eyes had gone a fraction harder. "Here we go," he said, shaking his head. "The king of beautiful speeches with 0 results. Barack, you had 8 years, and you gave people poetic sentences while the economy limped along and the world stopped respecting us. I came in, cleaned up the mess, and rebuilt it all. I cut regulations strangling business. I renegotiated deals that were robbing American workers blind. I did things. You talked about things." He spread his arms wide. "That's the difference between us. Some people govern, some people lecture. I governed." A portion of the audience clapped. But the room felt different now. The temperature had changed. People were sitting forward in their seats, tension running just below the surface like a current. Trump wasn't finished. "Leadership is simple," he continued, pointing across the table. "Move fast, make tough calls, win. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't waste 4 years building consensus with people who were going to disagree anyway. I acted, and people felt it. Jobs felt it. Their paychecks felt it. The border felt it. That is what a leader does. He shot Obama a sideways glance. While some people were busy giving beautiful speeches about unity, I was fixing the damage they left behind. The crowd stirred again. The energy in the room was coiling now, tightening with each exchange. Obama reached for one of his folded cards. He picked it up slowly, held it just below chest level, and let his eyes settle on Trump's face. "Interesting that you mention winning," Obama said, voice steady as a metronome. "Because back in 2016, at a town hall in Iowa during your campaign, you said something very specific. You said, and I'm quoting directly, 'Family comes first, even before the country. Family first, nation second.' Your own words." He paused and let the silence work. "So my question is a simple one. At what point does family first stop being about strength and start being a reason to put personal loyalty above everyone else?" The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. The front rows sat visibly straighter. A woman in the third row put her hand over her mouth. 3 cameras pivoted almost simultaneously. Trump's smirk disappeared for just a second, a flicker, barely visible, before his face locked back into something harder. But before Obama could continue, Trump erupted. "You're still talking," Trump snapped, voice punching through the quiet. "You're still talking while I was building, while I was creating jobs, securing the border, making America strong again, and you're sitting here digging up quotes from 10 years ago because you've got nothing else." His face was darkening, the color rising in his cheeks. "This is exactly why people got tired of the old Washington game. I delivered, you lectured. That was always the difference." The audience gasped at the sudden force of it. It was the first time Trump had raised his voice, and the studio physically reacted. People jerked back slightly in their seats, a few sharp inhales filling the room. Obama waited. He let Trump's words finish echoing through the space. Then he leaned forward just a little, his tone even but precise, each word landing exactly where it was aimed. "Action that serves 1% of the country," Obama said, "is not leadership. It's management for the privileged. When the wins you're describing widen the gap instead of closing it, when the people you say you fought for end up further behind than when you started, at some point you have to ask what the victory was actually for." Trump's jaw tightened. He started to speak, stopped, pointed a thick finger across the table. "Don't lecture me about who I serve," he snapped. Obama didn't break eye contact. "Then answer this directly," Obama said. "When the deals circle back to your circle, when the appointments, the pardons, the protections keep landing on people with your last name, or close to it, when does that stop being leadership and start being something else?" 5 seconds of silence. The studio held its breath. People looked at each other without moving their heads. Even the camera operators seemed frozen. Trump forced a laugh, but something had gone thin in it. "That's ridiculous," he said, but his voice had lost its earlier weight. Obama nodded slowly, no smile, no backing down. The moderator tried to ease the pressure just slightly. "Let's move for a moment to something both of you have spoken about publicly, the role of family. How does family shape the way a leader governs? How does it influence the decisions made at that level?" Trump straightened up immediately, like the question was a gift. "Family is everything," he said, his voice swelling with conviction. "It's the ultimate strength. When you have a strong family behind you, you fight harder. Everything I did, every deal, every tough call, every sacrifice, was to build something lasting. For my kids, for my grandchildren. Loyalty to family isn't a weakness. It's what makes a leader willing to put it all on the line. You stand by your blood, you build for the next generation. That's character." He nodded to himself, satisfied. Obama let a pause sit for a moment. "Family is important," he agreed, voice calm. "It shapes who we are. Most leaders draw genuine strength from the people they love." Then he picked up the second card from the table. "But let's be honest about what loyalty can become under the weight of power." He glanced at the card, then looked up. "In 2017, your daughter Ivanka said in a public interview that carrying your name came with tremendous pressure. She said it felt like living under a microscope. Her words, not mine." He set the card down. "When family loyalty wraps itself around every decision, when protecting the name matters more than answering hard questions, how do you make sure the country doesn't absorb the cost of that protection?" The audience murmured. Heads turned. A low wave of whispered exchanges moved through the seats. Trump's face changed instantly. The confidence fell away, and something tighter replaced it. Before Obama could continue, Trump pointed hard across the table, voice climbing. "You want to talk family? Let's talk yours," Trump fired back, leaning forward. You spent 8 years in office with your family living large on the public. Vacations, appearances, platforms. Your wife had a platform that cost millions. You preached transparency while keeping your own circle close and comfortable. Don't lecture me about family pressure when yours was out there building their brand on the taxpayer's back. At least my family builds things. Some in the crowd clapped, others gasped. The room was getting louder, the ceiling of the tension lifting higher. Obama didn't raise his voice. He waited for every word to land, then spoke with the kind of calm that feels more controlled than silence. Loyalty to blood, Obama said clearly, cannot override loyalty to the Constitution. The moment personal protection of family becomes more important than public accountability, the people stop being the point. You can love your family deeply, you should. But when that love becomes a wall that blocks honest scrutiny, it isn't strength. It's a weakness wearing strength's clothes. A low, rolling sound moved through the audience. Murmurs, gasps, people shifting. Someone near the back began to clap before stopping themselves. Trump's hand came down on the arm of his chair. Not quite a slam, but hard enough to hear. His jaw was locked, eyes narrowed, the calm long gone from his face. Obama didn't stop. He leaned forward, voice dropping even lower, eyes fixed directly on Trump. "Donald," he said, "I want to ask you something specific. The person in your inner circle, the one you've kept unusually close for years, the one your own associates have described in private communications as the person who handles the sensitive matters. What is that person's actual role? And why, when questions were raised, were those questions consistently redirected?" The studio went completely silent, not the ordinary quiet between sentences. This was a deeper silence, the kind where the air pressure changes, where you become aware of the hum of the lights overhead. Obama reached under the table. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and placed it between them. Unhurried, precise. Printed on it were dates, statements, a clear timeline, public records, Trump's own words from interviews and documented conversations, names and roles. "This is your own record," Obama said, sliding the paper slightly toward Trump's side of the table. "Your own statements from 2018 and 2020 about keeping certain individuals, quote, very protected because they are family adjacent. The timeline that follows those statements shows appointments, protections, and arrangements given to people connected directly to your family, even when serious conflict of interest questions were raised. This isn't interpretation, it's documentation." 10 seconds passed, 15. Nobody coughed, nobody shifted. The paper sat between them on the table like a verdict. Trump stared at it. His expression moved through surprise, then recognition, then raw fury, each one visible for just a second before the next arrived. Then he exploded. He shoved his chair back and rose halfway out of it, finger driving straight at Obama across the table, voice blowing out with pure anger. "You have no right," Trump roared. "You have no right to drag my family onto this stage. This is low. Even for you, Barack. You're desperate. You've got nothing left on my record, so you go after my son, my circle, people who had nothing to do with policy. This is disgraceful. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Washington Games dressed up as principal." His face was flushed deep red, chest heaving. Several audience members stood up involuntarily. The moderator went still, hands flat on his notes, clearly uncertain whether to intervene. A few people near the front actually stepped back from the edge of their seats. Obama did not move. He sat perfectly still while Trump finished. Then he waited 3 full seconds after the last word. Then he spoke. "When family becomes a shield against accountability," Obama said slowly, each word placed like a stone, "it stops being private. It becomes a public problem." He lifted the paper again and read directly from it, voice clear enough for every microphone in the room to catch every syllable. "These are your daughter's own words, published, available for anyone," she said, and I quote, "The name carries expectations that can cloud judgment. Sometimes you have to ask what's right for everyone, not just the family." She said that herself. He set the paper down. So when loyalty to blood means protecting people who should be held to the same standard as everyone else, that isn't strength protecting the family. That's weakness endangering the country. The audience erupted, not into applause, into something raw, gasps, voices, the sound of people reacting before they had processed what they were reacting to. Phones forgotten in laps. Some people gripped the armrests of their chairs. Trump's hand came down on the table, hard this time. The impact cracked through the studio like a bat hitting wood, and the nearest microphone shook on its stand. "You're twisting everything," Trump shouted, half standing, his voice cracking under the weight of his own anger. "My family works harder than any family in this country's history. We built an empire. You're jealous because you couldn't do the same. This is disgusting." Obama stayed seated. His posture was straight. His hands were still. His voice, when it came, was quiet. But it arrived in the silence after Trump's shout like a blade finding a seam. "No, Mr. President," Obama said. "You already tore down the office the day you decided that loyalty to your name was more important than loyalty to your oath." Trump's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time all night, in front of 300 people and a full battery of cameras, Donald Trump stood with nothing to say. His jaw moved slightly. His eyes searched the room, then came back to Obama, then moved away again. The man who had filled every room he'd ever entered with sound and fury stood completely silent for 4 full seconds. Then he reached for the only weapon left. "You want to talk secrets?" Trump said, voice lower now but trying to rebuild its force. "Fine. All those family moves you made behind closed doors during your presidency, the ones you kept quiet while you lectured the country about transparency. You think you're clean? You moved your own people into positions. You protected your own circle just like everyone else. Don't stand there like you're above it all." Obama answered without hesitating. Not a pause, not a breath. "When questions were raised about my family," Obama said, "we answered them, publicly, on the record. We didn't use the office as a wall to redirect scrutiny. We didn't issue protections when the questions got uncomfortable. The record is available. Every document, every public statement, every congressional testimony." He tapped the table once, firmly. "You can try to drag me down to the same level, but the documents tell the story. The American people can look at both records and judge for themselves who treated this office as a public trust and who treated it as a family business." The two men stared at each other. Trump's hands were shaking. Not with power, with anger that had run out of a target. Obama sat still, but his eyes burned with the quiet intensity of a man who had waited a long time to say exactly this, exactly here, in exactly this way. It was Trump who moved first. He shoved his chair back with such force that it nearly tipped over, the legs screeching across the stage floor. He stood to his full height, face a deep, livid red, fists clenched at his sides so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. "I won't sit here and be slandered," he said, voice raw and shaking. "This is a disgrace. I'm done with these lies." He looked at the moderator, looked back at Obama, looked at the audience. "I have better things to do than listen to this garbage." He turned and walked toward the curtain. His footsteps were the only sound in the studio for one long second, each step loud and sharp against the stage floor, as the most powerful man who had ever left a room tried to leave this one. Obama didn't stand up to follow him. He didn't raise his voice or call after him. He simply looked toward the retreating figure and spoke, quietly, calmly, his voice carrying to every corner of the room without effort. "Running away," Obama said, "is the clearest proof that power without truth cannot stand." Trump stopped. Half a second, maybe less. His back was to the room. Nobody could see his face. His shoulders rose and fell once. Then he kept walking and disappeared behind the curtain. The studio detonated. Boos and cheers collided in the air, creating a sound like a wave crashing against rock. People were on their feet. Cameras swung between the disappearing Trump and the motionless Obama. The moderator sat with his notes still flat on the table, not moving. Obama waited. He sat alone at the center of the stage under those blazing lights and waited for the noise to come down enough for his voice to carry. Then he looked into the main camera, not at the audience, not at the empty chair beside him, directly into the lens. "Real leadership is not the loudest voice," he said. "It is not the tallest building or the most decisive swagger or the sharpest insult. Real leadership is the courage to hold yourself accountable first, to question even the people you love most, to choose truth over the comfort of loyalty that protects the wrong things." He paused. When a leader places personal blood above the nation's trust, when the circle becomes the country, democracy does not disappear overnight. It gets hollowed out quietly, decision by decision, protection by protection, until the institution is still standing, but the principle inside it is gone. The audience began to clap, not everyone, then more, then all of them, rising section by section until the applause rolled through the studio like a tide coming in. Obama sat through it, nodding once, not triumphant, not smiling, just present, composed, the same man who had walked onto this stage half an hour ago and sat down with 2 cards and a piece of paper and taken apart a fortress, brick by brick. When the noise pulled back just enough, he looked into the camera one final time. "Real power," Obama said quietly, "does not need to scream. It only needs to speak the truth, once." The stage lights dimmed slowly like a curtain being drawn. The applause kept going. Long after the screen faded to black, the words stayed, suspended in the air of that studio, pressed into the memories of every person who had been sitting in those seats, not quite ready to leave, not yet finished with what they had just witnessed. If tonight changed how you see leadership, hit subscribe right now. These aren't just confrontations, they are windows into how power actually works, who bends it, who breaks under it, and who stands up when it matters most. Drop a comment below. Did he go too far, or did he not go far enough? And turn on notifications, because the next one goes even deeper.